Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with a video on Knights are stronger than the Queen, or Thankfully he discovered chess, and it's also number 10 in the series The Magical Knight, which is part of a series The Magical Chess Pieces, a series of videos in which a particular chess piece, king, queen, rook, bishop, knight and pawn, does something magical. You can find a playlist to the earlier videos in this series at the end of this video, and also I will put it up here. In the position on the board, it is white to play and win. It is a composition from Mario Matusz from the Czech Republic, and I probably pronounce his last name wrong, and it was published in 1995. If we count the pieces, technically black is slightly ahead in material. A queen is worth more than 2 knights and 2 pawns. But of course, white has already a pawn on g7, and this pawn is also quite advanced. And as we'll see, the knights will outsmart the queen in this composition. When I did research on this video, I found that the life story of this composer, Mario Matusz, is quite touching. I wanted to share it with you. He was born in Mladá Boleslav, 55 kilometers northeast of Prague, which is now the Czech Republic, on June 16, 1947, into an intellectual family. Both his parents were language teachers. The 3-year-old boy's first memories are connected with the arrest of his mother, who was imprisoned by the communist regime for about 2 years for purely political reasons. As was the practice at that time, the whole family was prosecuted. The father was obliged to take a third-rate manual job, and the children spent some time in nurseries. Mario declined to participate in Pioneer, the mass communist youth organization, and instead worked actively in the Roman Catholic Church. The communists did not forgive such things, and a well-read boy with an excellent academic record obtained permission only to be trained as a fitter. However, Mario, like most chess players, as we know, was not manually skilled and thus had a lifetime problem in finding suitable employment. Thankfully, he discovered chess and became one of the most original composers of endgame studies. Mario Matusz died at the age of 66, but his works will live forever. And this is a picture of the great man, which I took, as well as that text that I just read to you, from an article on the ChessBase website. Quite a life story. Well, let's now go into this composition, which was composed by Mario Matusz. White to play and win. Of course, you want to promote that g-pawn. For the moment, the g8 square is covered by black's queen, so the first move makes sense, which is, by the way, is the only move that wins. Knight e3 to c4, and now g7, g8. Promotion to queen is a big threat. What can black do? Well, let's first look at queen g2, covering the promotion square that way. Well, again, there's only one winning move, and that is knight to e5 here. And black cannot take that pawn, because then there is knight e6 check with a fork. King moves, and then you take the queen, and this is an easily winning position. Just the 2 knights against the king would be a draw, but white still has a pawn left. Okay, so after knight e5 you cannot take the pawn on g7. What if black makes a waiting move, let's say queen g1? How does white win then? Well then, white promotes and gives up that pawn. Black has to take, and then the only move that wins is knight d to c6 check. If you go to c8 with the king, then we have another knight fork. A family fork, picking up the queen like this, and white wins. And if after knight d to c6 check you go to e8 instead, then there is d7 check, and that pawn will promote king f8, promotion to queen, and it will be checkmate in only a few moves. Like this, queen c6 check, king h8, one more check, the queen interposes, and mate in 2 from here. Check and checkmate. So all this, let's go back to the start. We played knight c4 on the first move, and then queen g2 and knight e5, and we see that white wins in all variations. taking the pawn doesn't work, and waiting doesn't work either, because then white will promote and will win this game, as we just saw. So after knight c4, what else can black do instead of queen g2? We still need to control that g-pawn. Well, the other variation is that black can give a check. That's also okay. It's a check, and in fact it's a double attack. What happens then? Well, the only winning move here is king d5. Let's first see why another move doesn't work. What about knight b6 to interpose a check? Well, then we should not take the pawn. We already saw that variation because there is this knight e6 family fork. White wins the queen and wins the game. So after knight b6, the move that doesn't work, what can black do? He can draw the game with queen a3 check. And why is this a draw? This is a complicated composition. King c6 from white. White wants to hide from the checks and then hope his two pawns will win the game for him. Helped by the knights jumping around, threatening to fork king and queen all over the place. But this game is a draw. Queen a2 is the next move, controlling the g8 square. Then king b7, queen g8, d7. If we can't promote the g-pawn, we'll try to promote the d-pawn, but this doesn't work. The road is very narrow for black. The only move that draws here is king e7, and then we can give a check. King e6, king c7, and we're going to promote that d-pawn, aren't we? Yes, we are. After king takes f5, right promotes to a queen, but now queen takes g7 check is the move. The g-pawn is gone, and this is a theoretical draw. If white doesn't have an immediate mate, which he doesn't, then this is just an equal position. White cannot make progress. Black has too many checks and can also continuously try to swap the queens. And if the queens are swapped, the game is a theoretical draw with a lone knight against the king. So how did we get here? We started with knight c4, and then we played queen a7 check. And we saw that what does not work is knight b6 because of queen a3 check. And we saw the variations. So what to do after queen a7 check? The only move that wins here for white is king d5. And why does that win? Well, we're going to look at that. Again, you cannot take that pawn. We saw that already. Knight e6 picks up the queen. But black can stop one square earlier and give a check on f7. Queen f7 check. Then there is knight e6 check. Check and counter check. And if you go to d7 with the king, then there is another knight fork, knight e5 check, winning the game, king e8, and the queen is gone. Easy win for white. And if after knight e6 check you go to e8, then we get the main line. By the way, king c8 leads to the same thing, but let's look at king e8, because now the only way to win is d7 check. And why is that the only way to win? Let's look at one other move after king e8. Let's try knight e5. That doesn't work, and it's a very nice variation which shows that this doesn't work. It's a very rich problem, this, because there is queen b7 check, and that saves black. Because after the king moves, there is, if you want to look for yourself, how does black save himself here in one move? It is queen d5 check. That is a bombshell. Because if you take the queen, we have a stalemate on the board. The black king has no moves but is not in check. The game is a draw. And if after queen d5 check you decide to flee with the king instead of allowing that draw, then you're going to lose that game with white. Because after queen takes e5 check, black will win. So after king e8 we saw that knight e5 does not work. The only move that works is d7 check, the only way to win. And if you take that pawn with the king, then it is an easy win for white. With a knight fork again, knight e5 check. Let's look at the black king getting checkmated. Knight takes queen, king takes. We have to be careful, we don't want to give away that pawn on g7. The knight is firmly protecting it, but the knight has to stay there. We bring over the king, and we put the black king in zugzwang. King f7, king h6, queen, and checkmate. Okay, so all this after d7 check and then taking with the king. Then we have that knight fork. One after d7 check we take with the queen. Queen takes d7. Counter check. It looks like black is getting very close to a draw now. He still has the queen, one of the pawns is gone. And white is in check. Well, then the only move that wins is knight d6. Counter check. It's check, counter check and counter check again. Wonderful. And now if you play king e7, which is black's last trick, then g8 queen does not work. We finally found a way to promote that pawn and keep the new queen alive. But after queen takes d6 check, king c4, queen takes e6 check, this game is a draw. There's nothing left on the board apart from two kings. No, after king e7 there is another move that wins. Promotion to queen leads to a draw. Do you see the final move of this amazing composition? The knights are stronger than the queen. Two knights are stronger than the queen. What about three knights? g8, promotion to a knight, is check, and it's also checkmate. The black king has no squares and is in check. No stalemate, this is checkmate. Quite a complex problem, but the engine agrees with all the variations. Matus had published this composition in 1995, so he had composed this without help from any engines, or maybe with the help of very weak engines. Let's have a look at the main line again because it is so beautiful. Knight c4, the first move. Then we saw that queen g2 doesn't work. Queen a7 check is more stubborn. King d5 is the only winning move then. And you cannot take that pawn on g7, but you can give a check. Then there is knight e6 check with a counter check. King e8. And then the only move that wins is d7 check. Don't take it with the king. If you take it with the queen, then there is knight d6 check, another counter check, king e7, and g8 knight. Promotion on the sixth move to finish the game. Quite a complex composition, but I hope you agree with me that it is very, very beautiful. And Matus composed many more of this type of gem. So we are all lucky that Matus discovered chess. As said, his compositions will live forever. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you like this video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.